Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. This segment's brought to you by Xceligent, building data everywhere. Visit xceligent.com. Well, today we're talking about senior housing. Please welcome my next guest, George Yedinak. He is founder of Senior Housing News, and he's joining us on the phone. George, good to talk to you. How have you been?
I've been great, Michael. Thanks for having me back.
Well, George, you've got your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the senior housing world, and it seems like more and more people are getting interested in getting into investing and developing in senior housing. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we're getting quite a bit of information and interest from other third parties, such as commercial real estate developers and multifamily developers, really starting to take a keen interest in senior housing. And starting to ask lots of questions and where to look to in the marketplace and how to grow that segment of their businesses. It's really something that has started to increase significantly here in the first part of 2017.
And what are some of the things that they're asking you? What are they looking for?
They're looking for recommendations and information on where they can learn more information about the business of senior housing. Senior housing is such a business-related function versus just strictly a real estate function. And those individuals and corporations are really looking for knowledge and information, whether it's conferences, white papers, or news articles. They're really asking for information to become, subject matter experts quickly, because that's what a lot of their investors and capital providers want them to become very, very quickly.
Right. And they also need the right team around them, right?
Yeah, no, I think it comes back to, working with good partners and networking effectively with, people that have been in the business before, whether that's, current operators in the marketplace to do a joint venture, or really getting expertise from architects and consultants that really can help those individuals make the right business decisions on entering senior housing for the first time, or maybe it's their second or third time, but it's definitely one where finding those folks with experience is really a key to success for multifamily folks coming into senior housing.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. It's so much more of a business than some of the typical real estate. And you're running an apartment complex. If you've got a good management company, you've bought real estate, and when you develop senior housing, maybe you have a company operating that, but they're really operating a business that has a lot of people involved, and therefore a little more risk, but more return. And when you talk about return, you got to talk about capital and interest rates and financing. What are you seeing for trends out there in the capital stack?
We're hearing from lenders and owners and operators in the marketplaces. There's the expectation that rates are going to slowly increase here as we go forward. Nothing significant, I would say, from what we're talking to people in the industry in the next 6 to 12 months. But, they're definitely kind of eyeing things on the increase as the economy continues to improve, and seniors are finding that there's more home equity in their homes to move into these properties. But, as rates go up, there's been more interest in the business to lock things in and go forward.
Right. And George, you hear from everyone in the industry at these events and just in general when you're talking to them. So what is your sense from being so heavily in the senior housing market of the industry's expectation on cap rates moving forward? You mentioned that there's some expectation of interest rates to slowly rise. What about cap rates?
I think cap rates, from everyone we've talked to, look to stay stable, if not slightly increase. I think there's starting to be some word in the marketplace of some occupancy decline slightly and overbuilding in certain markets. And, those are putting some pressure on the marketplace today as people get concerned about, kind of a supply imbalance, at least in the next 6 to 12, maybe even 18 months. So there's some pressure there.
Yeah. And we're talking with George Yedinak. He's founder of Senior Housing News, about the senior housing industry. And George, let's talk to operators for a moment. If there's some operators around the country that are in the day-to-day business of operating these businesses, what are some tips for them that you see that might help them?
You know, it comes back to running the business of senior living, and I think one of the things that we continue to hear folks discuss out in the marketplace is really focusing on driving occupancy higher, and almost into that 95, 97, 8% range of really focusing on maximizing their occupancy. I think when you look at the statistics in the marketplaces today for senior housing, many operators seem to kind of average out, call it between 85 and 90%, depending on the product type and the marketplace. And there's been a big push on getting that even higher, which really, really significantly improves the profitability of the community, where that occupancy can be driven a few points higher and really drops significant money down to the bottom line. So we're seeing a lot of people talk about focusing in on sales and marketing and lead generation to help continue to build their businesses for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and Beth mentioned the same thing, that a lot of operators are kind of looking at the kind of the technology, the websites, and try to generate those leads. And then once you get those leads, then you've got to make sure that you have the right match, right, and that you have the right people to close the right tenants and get them into your property, right?
Yeah, I think senior housing is just like any other business out there, where the cost of customer acquisition is very, very high in most cases, and all good owner-operators are really looking at that process and figuring out how they can drive the cost of that customer acquisition down, whether it's building a better website or doing sales staff training or different avenues like that, really to focus on how can they lower that cost of acquisition.
Yeah, and I recently looked at several locations and several different projects, and I think one of the things that swayed me as picking a senior housing assisted living for my mother was really the people. Did you really feel like they cared? And that's really the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, no, the people part of this business is one of the toughest angles, both from the upfront sales process, but all the way to the day-to-day operations and activities that go on in the communities. And it continues to be a industry-wide struggle to figure out what the best strategies are for attracting and retaining that talent. But at the end of the day, most businesses that are successful have great people in them, operating them day to day.
Yeah. And George, you mentioned there's a lot more people interested in the senior housing sector. Are you seeing that from institutional investors? Are you seeing it from foreign investors as well?
Domestically, we're seeing it more from national investors. There's lots of talk about foreign capital coming in, where before there's been a lot of focus on EB-5 programs, and those continue to be in discussion, but not as frequently as before. But I think there are some very significant capital providers and institutional investors domestically here in the U.S. that are really looking at senior housing assets for the long term.
Yeah. Well, George, great information as usual. Thanks for joining us on America's Commercial Real Estate Show.
Thanks, Michael. Have a good one.
If you'd like more information, we'll put a link on the show website to Senior Housing News. Check it out if you're at all interested in the senior housing market. And stay tuned. We'll have more on senior housing on America's Commercial Real Estate Show. Stay with us.